Our Law and Justice segment tonight, the FBI has classified Black Identity Extremists as a new domestic terror threat, according to an internal FBI memo leaked to the public. FBI data shows the increase in premeditated violence against police officers waged by Black Identity Extremists. We saw this in the shooting of the Dallas police officers last year by Black nationalist Micah Johnson, and that was not an isolated incident. But to liberals, these facts don't matter. Liberals are having a fit about the new FBI classification, and we should be glad to hear this from liberals because it once again exposes their real agenda. To liberals, it isn't about protecting lives. It's about identity politics. With me now, law enforcement expert and author of The Truth Behind the Black Lives Matter Movement and the War on Police, Dr. Ron Martinelli. Dr. Ron, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you again, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's always good to see you, and we've talked so often, so frequently this week, and I like that. But Dr. Ron, weigh in on this for me. So the FBI is citing Black extremists as a new domestic terror threat. This was a memo that was intended to be internal to the FBI only. It was leaked to the public. They're citing these premeditated threats that we've seen against law enforcement by Black identity extremists here, but liberals are outraged about this. They're claiming that this is a case of the race card being played deliberately. What do you make of it?
Well, these are people that are uninformed and are not on the front lines like law enforcement and forensic experts such as myself that have to deal with the tragedy of officer-involved violence, officer-involved shootings, and in-custody deaths. Black Lives Matter, as I said in the book, was going to grow exponentially if it was not checked by law enforcement, including the FBI. These are absolutely Black extremists. They're Marxist-oriented, communist-oriented, and they really seek to destroy the rule of law and the democratic way of government. And law enforcement protects the rule of law, so of course they have to attack law enforcement first.
Right, and it seems to me that the facts back this up. I, of course, am not privy, and neither are the liberal critics to this, are not privy to classified information that the FBI might know about specific people, but we can see this for ourselves. We saw it in Dallas last year. I mentioned that in the introduction. The police officers gunned down by a Black nationalist who hated them because they were cops and identified as a Black nationalist. I mean, that's a horrendous thing. It is a threat against our law enforcement. And there are more than just 7 police officers. Those are the most well-known ones, I suppose. But this does happen on a regular basis every year in our country. So why would there be a problem with recognizing that?
I don't know what's the matter with this country, but I will tell you this. There is not just a political war going on in this country, but a culture war going on in this country. And so that's why you see the rise of Black extremist groups that we haven't seen since the 1960s and 70s, when we had the Black Panther Party, the Black Guerrilla Movement, Black nationalism. We had, Assata Shakur, who was a police assassin, who now they wear the T-shirts. Black Lives Matter people wear the T-shirts, Assata taught me. The people just don't remember the history, and the younger people weren't born during those years when we were involved in law enforcement and had to tolerate the bombings and the shootings of our officers and the attempts to overthrow parts of our government.
Well, that's the other point to be made here, is this recent designation, at least within the FBI, of Black identity extremists being a domestic terror threat. That's been fomenting in our country for the past couple of years. And I think you can put some of the responsibility on Black Lives Matter for fomenting these false narratives. I mean, it was the Black Lives Matter movement that ginned up all the outrage in Ferguson after the shooting of Michael Brown. They're the ones that propagated the false narrative of hands up, don't shoot, before the forensic analysis came in and told us that that's actually not what happened. He was attacking the police officer. They're not interested in facts. And if you don't look in, if people don't look into it themselves, if they just take it and believe it wholesale, what Black Lives Matter is saying, then I don't blame them for being this angry against police officers, because what they're saying, if it were true, would be horrible. It's just not true.
And that's why we have to have a lot more information pushed out to the mainstream media and to the general public. I wish everybody would read, The Truth Behind the Black Lives Matter Movement and the War on Police. It's a thoroughly vetted book. You don't have to take my word for it. All the sources are in there. And I think if they read books like mine and also Dr. McDonald's with the War on Cops, they would see what the real truth is out there. And if we don't get that truth out there, we will never have justice as a society in the United States.
Right, and this, I want to read this for our viewers. This is from the memo from within the FBI. This is what they say. They say the FBI assesses it is very likely Black identity extremist perceptions of police brutality against African Americans spurred an increase in premeditated, retaliatory, lethal violence against law enforcement and will very likely serve as justification for such violence. When you juxtapose that, Dr. Ron, with the number of police officers that are shot, if you juxtapose the number of police officers shot, I should say, with the number of police-involved shootings of Black men, that gives you a much clearer picture of the state, I guess, of justified versus unjustified killings in our nation than the narratives do.
Yeah, and the truth is just so upside down with Black Lives Matter and also the mainstream media. People have to remember that statistically, the chance of a police officer encountering and killing a Black suspect is less than being struck by lightning, literally less than being struck by lightning. And Black suspects murder officers at a rate of 7 times more than officers encounter and kill Black suspects. And over 68% of all the suspects that are Black suspects that officers encounter and kill are armed and trying to kill them. The other ones are taking their guns away from them, like Michael Brown. That was never a hands up, don't shoot reality. It was a blatant lie. And the FBI did a huge investigation. 4 different agencies in the Michael Brown case investigated that case, and they all found Darren Wilson justified in the shooting of Michael Brown. But this is happening all over the United States.
Right, and when you propagate narratives like that, it's not meaningless, it's dangerous, because when people believe that without vetting it for themselves, even if it's their responsibility to vet it for themselves, a lot of people don't. These movements know that when you propagate these narratives, it has consequences, and the consequences are police officers are being attacked. They're being shot in the back, they're being stabbed, they are being assaulted by people who are the ones playing the race cards. There is a deliberate race card being played here, and it's by these Black nationalists, and I'm glad the FBI is designating them as a threat, because they are. Dr. Ron, I appreciate your insight on this issue as always. Thanks for being here.